The strange tale of the sugar loaves that turned a school principal into a detective. Hello, friends. You're listening to The School Principal, Part 11, written by Jalal Al-e Ahmad.
In the beginning, I didn't pay much attention to the kids. I thought the age gap between us was enough to leave each other alone. I had also read some nonsense about how the age of the teacher and student shouldn't be too far apart, and about the gap between two generations, the men of yesterday and the children of tomorrow. And such drivel. I was also busy with my own work. I would close the office door and, in the warmth of the government heater, write like a man possessed. But this didn't last more than 3 or 4 months. I got tired. I had to go to the school more often, and I was discovering many new things. One was that the place of our old, worn-out teachers from our time was so empty. What people they were! What personalities! Unknown yet, each with their own unique language and mannerisms. And these? What clumsy young men. What effortless imitators of Western affectations. They knew nothing of their own past, nor of the new criteria they had obtained through 70 intermediaries. They understood nothing. Worst of all was their incompetence. For example, it never occurred to any of them to join forces and disrupt the school's work for a week. No, a day, even an hour. They came and went calmly and orderly, just like the Shah Abdolazim train cars. All they knew was to arrive 10 or 15 minutes late each day, and that was it. And even worse than that was their pettiness. I witnessed 3 arguments that started over a flower pot. There were many gardeners' children, and each brought at least 1 pot of carnations, geraniums, or chrysanthemums per month, which was a blessing in that snow and cold. At first, I decided to decorate the school with them, but what was the use? No one watered them or looked after them, and rightly so. The kids brought the flowers for their teachers. What was the school supposed to do with flowers? I'm sure even Plato's academy turned into a barren desert once his students set foot in it. And worse than all of this was the teachers' lack of character, which drove me crazy. They couldn't string 2 words together. They were ignorant of the world, of culture, of art, even of price changes and the cost of meat. What useless people they were. I felt that in the classrooms, it was not the students, but the teachers who were becoming more settled week by week, changing from one week to the next. As a result, I told myself to pay more attention to the kids. They too only dealt with the supervisor, and it seemed they owed me nothing more than a half-mumbled greeting. Still, they weren't hopeless. I watched over them in the alley. They cried. I would surprise them at the school corner and try to guess their words, conversations, grievances, and thoughts from an unfinished curse or an incomplete expression. They would run off, and I was sure their faces remained red for half an hour afterward. Their shoes and clothes broke my heart. So I started paying attention to their meals and their comings and goings. They very rarely came to school alone. It was clear they waited for each other along the way or visited each other's homes. I suppose to approach the fortress of culture, they needed companions. There were 3 or 4 of them who came with an escort. A servant or maid followed them carrying their bags. But none of them came to school by car. I knew 7 or 8 of them had fathers who owned cars. But the road to the school could break 2 of their springs in a day. Of the 20 or 30 who stayed for lunch, only 2 brought rice and stew, the school janitor had informed me. The rest brought things like ground meat kebabs, walnut and feta, dumplings, and such. There were also 2 who brought plain sangak bread. No napkin, no cloth, no bag. They were brothers, 5th and 3rd grades. In the morning, their pockets were bulging. They would tear the sangak in half, stuff it into their pockets, and at noon, they would go out like those who ate lunch at home. They must have found a cozy spot in the wilderness to devour their bread and return. I only saw them leaving, but even these 2 bought 1 or 2 krons worth of junk from the school janitor each day. Stretchy candy, decals, pencils, and gum. From the same old school janitor whose 5 Tommen monthly salary I had secured, and whom I had introduced to a local shopkeeper who gave him goods on credit and accepted installment payments. And now he had become a master in his own right. When I arrived, or when I was about to leave school, he would run to take my raincoat. Though I showed him every day that I wasn't used to such habits, he insisted on his servility. For the entire time I was principal, not a day passed without him helping me take off or put on my raincoat. What torture it was, like someone counting every bite you take. He would stand there, staring into my eyes, and I would ask about him, his wife, and his children. As soon as I sat down and spread out my work, he would start reporting that yesterday 2 teachers had fought over a flower pot again, or the military governor's agent had come, or the inspector had such and such exchange with the supervisor, or such and such school's fund manager had been paid, or the education department accountant had been replaced, and such drivel. It was clear the new janitor also had a share in the stories he told. This way, I had 15 minutes of hard labor each day. And thinking back, I realized this certainly contributed to my afternoon absences. Until one day, during his reports, he also mentioned that the previous afternoon, one of the 4th grade kids had brought 2 sugar loaves to sell to him. It was as if he had handed me the end of a thread. I asked, how much? I gave him 2 tumens, sir. You went to trouble? Didn't you ask where he got them? I'm not the guarantor of his heaven or hell, sir. He hadn't been so quick with answers before. The new janitor's influence was evident in this ready retort. I thought everyone in this school was learning something except me and the kids. Then I asked, why didn't you inform the supervisor? I knew both he and the new janitor saw the supervisor as their rival, and kept many things from him. These two, like other hangers-on in the education department, knew that the school's finances were handled by the supervisor, and probably thought if I took charge of the income and expenses myself, they would get a share too. So they played favorites between me and the supervisor. Hesitantly, he replied, just as the door opened and the new janitor entered. If I had informed him, sir, I would have had to give him his share. I frowned and said, are you still meddling in people's affairs? It's not like they barge into someone's room unannounced, old man. Then I asked them the boy's name, let them know it wasn't too important, and sent them to bring me tea. Then I finished my work early and went to the office room. I asked about the supervisor's mother's health, and under the pretext of flipping through files, I learned that the boy was a second-year student, and his father was a bazaar merchant. Then I returned to my room. I wrote a note to the father asking him to come to the school the day after tomorrow morning, and gave it to the new janitor to deliver and bring back the receipt. And the day after tomorrow morning, the guy came. You have to be a school principal to know how easily parents yield to the smallest demands of schools. I'm sure if you sent them to get their registration executed, they wouldn't show up so quickly. He was a 45-year-old man with a buttoned-up collar but no tie, and an overcoat that resembled a kaba, and he seemed embarrassed. Before he even sat down, I asked, "You have 2 wives, sir?" I had made some predictions about his son myself, and thought I'd bluff him this way. If it worked, all the better. If not, it could easily be resolved. But it was clear my question didn't surprise him much. After all, a school principal can be as privy to one's secrets as a bathhouse attendant. And he probably thought his son had revealed something. I had tea brought for him and offered him a cigarette, which he smoked clumsily. Afraid he might protest, "What's it to you?" and such objections, I didn't give him a chance and followed up my question like this. You must forgive me. I suppose it's for such reasons that your son has repeated the same grade for 2 years. You admit that when a student brings sugar loaves from his father's house to school, there must be reasons. I had started to give him a lecture when he interrupted me. Annoyed, "I swear on your head, he gets pocket money every day, sir. The salt-burning bastard." I made him understand it wasn't about the pocket money, asked him not to get angry, and made him promise not to mention it to his son at all. Then, I gave him my lecture. That surely his son didn't see affection at home, was a stranger among his own, didn't consider his father's property his own, and if he brought sugar loaves to school today, next year he would sell the house's rug on the street corner, and other prophecies, and other nonsense. Until finally, the guy's embarrassment melted away, and he opened his heart. how his first wife was such and such a monster. His son took after her. He had divorced her. How many children he had with his second wife. And this dumb donkey should now be earning his own keep. And his wife had every right not to manage with 2 small children. And when things became clear, I gave him another lecture, and suddenly realized I was citing God, the Prophet, and the Quran as proof for him. Then I stopped. He finished his second tea, made his promises, and left. I got to thinking, maybe education experts are just laying double yolk eggs like this too.
The next part of this story will be uploaded tomorrow. What you will hear in the next episode: she didn't come to teach, she came to expose the truth.